SaaS Backwards is sponsored by Austin Lawrence Group, specializing in demand gen for SaaS. It sure is noisy. I deleted 100 emails from vendors just this morning. Your buyer has gotten better at ignoring you, and you're gonna need a big idea if you want to cut through all that clutter. Austin Lawrence is just the right agency to help you find it. So if your campaigns are falling on deaf eyeballs, let's talk. Visit austinlawrence.com today and let's build something bigger.
Welcome to the SaaS Backwards podcast, where we reverse engineer the success of fast-growing SaaS firms and explore strategies CMOs and CEOs are using to drive their businesses forward.
Welcome to SaaS Backwards, a podcast that helps SaaS CMOs and CEOs to accelerate growth and enhance profitability. Our guest today is Molly St. Louis, head of marketing at DealTale, a SaaS that leverages causal machine learning methods to enable revenue teams to see beyond predictions and use data to identify prescriptive actions that drive profitable growth. Hey, Molly, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Ken, it's good to see you and hear you there. You know, it's a podcast after all, but I can see you.
Yeah, it is. It's awesome. I'm glad you're here. And before we dig in, could you just tell us a little bit more about yourself and DealTale?
Sure. So I'm head of marketing for DealTale. I started off in entertainment and I went into marketing. Well before social media was a thing, which ages me a lot. But DealTale is a SaaS platform for marketers. We're marketers marketing to marketers, I like to say. And what we do is really, really deep revenue attribution. So for those marketers out there like yourself, like me, that are content marketers or publicists, or they're doing things top of the funnel, we can actually track how those top of funnel metrics actually become revenue down the customer journey. And then now we have this ChatGPT-like feature that allows marketers that aren't tech savvy, that aren't used to building reports. You could just ask it whatever data question you want to ask it, and it just spits out the answer for you in about 5 seconds, maybe less. So we're really excited about that too. The new world of ChatGPT,
Yeah, well, that interface is pretty exciting. I watched the demo on the website, and I could definitely see people getting a lot more out of their data as a result of that kind of interface. That's very cool. I can't dig in too deep without asking you what you meant by entertainment. So what were you doing before you got into being a journalist?
Oh, gosh. So my father was a theater actor, a Shakespearean actor, musical theater actor. And I trained from really, really young. And I was just going to follow in my father's footsteps. I got out of school really early. I joined the union when I was I did my first professional play when I was 13. I joined the unions when I was still a teenager, went to a conservatory, worked as a stage manager and an actor in professional theater shows. And I thought that was going to be it. But then once I got out of the conservatory, some family things happened, and I was young and responsible financially for a lot of people, at a young age. So I took a job in production, managing commercials, doing script supervision for some different Hollywood folks, and just kind of dipping my toes into other forms of creativity. But I really just followed the money. Somebody asked me, hey, if you can write for this, what if you did this as a marketer? Flash forward, I'm 25 and the head of marketing for a surgery center, which I built into a multi-million-dollar business during the recession, the 2008 recession. And I did it using video because that was what I knew how to do. And so, you just, sometimes I'm sure you have had these moments in your own career, you learn just by being open to things. One of the doctors that I represented at the time at the surgery center comes into my office and says, I just saw somebody I went to school with on Dr. Oz and he sucks. Why is he on Dr. Oz and not me? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, I guess he has an agent, perhaps. So he said, try to get me on Dr. Oz. And so I went, calling up some agents that I knew from having been an actor, and eventually found one that represented doctors. And he did represent my doctors for commercials, for experts. But he said, no, to get on Dr. Oz, you need to be a publicist. And so I was like, ooh, publicist. And I learned what a publicist did. And I thought, well, I have a production background and I have a marketing background now. Maybe I should be a publicist. And so I went to work for a PR firm. And in learning how to pitch to the media, I kind of did it wrong. And the media that I pitched to ended up asking me, like, hey, can you just be a writer for us? We really like how you write. So I became a writer for Inc. magazine, Adweek, the Huffington Post, Yahoo. I think Yahoo is the first one. And it was really just kind of like being open to everything. So that's how it became the writing part of things. It was really just kind of like failing upwards, if that makes sense.
Well, I think that for people in their, early to mid career, it is important to sort of just be very open and, pay attention when maybe a door cracks open. It might not open wide, but it might open just enough to look in and see if there's something there. So that's
Absolutely.
awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. And from there, my husband's an actor. We were getting serious at the time. He got a Broadway show out in New York, and I decided to start my own business, my own content, video, and PR business to travel with him. This was before we were all remote and it was like not a thing yet. And one of my first clients was a client called Mintago, and the head of marketing there was Ariel Geifman, who is now the CRO at DealTale. So many companies later, Ariel called me and said, some other folks made this product. Do you want in? And I said, yes. I said, hell yes, because Ariel's awesome. He's a fantastic marketer, and I jumped at the chance.
That's very cool. Thanks for sharing that journey. And I think it's a natural segue to ask you this question. When taking a look at DealTale as a sort of an outsider looking in, I noticed there's a lot of video being used to help tell the story. And can you just share with us, the role of video in, your marketing work for DealTale, and, why you're relying on it and what it's providing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you kind of go with what you know. I'm an actor, and I also edit all the videos and do, the direction for them and everything. And so part of it is because there's nothing that I love more than editing. It's my favorite thing to do in the whole world, video editing. But more than that, we have a product that can come across as, I think, sometimes intimidating for marketers that maybe came up in a time that technology wasn't so necessary for marketing. Some people that are used to doing ads that may not have used an attribution tool before. And what we wanted to do with the video series was make it really relatable so that people could see we're human beings and we're working it out too. We are now aware of ChatGPT at the same time everybody else is. And you got to lean into it, in terms of innovation and technology. But the reason why we don't do as many animated videos is because we want people to see human beings doing this. And specifically, a lot of the people that we use in the video series are me and other people that work at DealTale. And so those are the actors, so that when we actually say things, it's not an actor saying it, it's somebody that's actually doing it.
Yeah, it's clear that they have expertise. I watched one with you and the CEO and chairman. There was one little chat video that was great. And there were a couple with some of your colleagues as well, featured actors.
Thank you. Yeah, they're wonderful. When you get to work with great people, that's always a plus.
So the idea is to use video to make the technology more relatable. And also, I like that idea of, we're trying to figure it out too. We're just other humans trying to figure out how to do this better. So
yeah. I mean, you probably know this from your side of things. You've been doing things a long while. Those of us that may have studied, 20 years ago or 30 years ago, things were different back then. I remember taking out billboards in my first marketing job, or doing, TV commercials that weren't so targeted, that you could just go, oh, I want to be in the houses of chief revenue officers. You just sort of did it, and you got an uplift in calls or whatever it was. And now it's just totally different. So I think all of us are figuring it out.
Absolutely. I want to dig into that. Before we started the episode, we were talking about the importance of, novel thinking and idea generation. But it's one thing to assert it, and maybe it's another to prove it. Right? Mm-hmm. So the idea of attribution is important, because then we can say, see, we told you having a big idea could very well provide a business outcome. And now I want to be able to demonstrate that. So can you sort of help us understand how DealTale is helping the transition from that old school of, hey, I put stuff out there and hopefully I get some uplift, to I put stuff out there and I have the beginnings of relationships with people and I can see them become engaged with my company?
Absolutely. So my last few jobs have been in very top of funnel marketing. So I was the director of branded content for Clary. It was a, late stage startup that has a big reputation for being revenue driven. And then before that, just another unicorn company and being the head of communications for that. And those are very top of funnel things when you go, hey, we just did a video documentary with a media partner that cost, $1 million. And we got award nominations for it, and 2 million people saw it. And you want to bring like these metrics back to your team and have, them pat you on the back and be like, yeah, like, good job. But then you get the question now, well, okay, that's cool, but how much revenue did it create? And when you work in B2B, you're not going to know that immediately. And sometimes like these top of funnel activities haven't up until this point been trackable. Or for another example, you pay a PR firm $15,000 a month or $25,000 a month, and you get a couple placements and you go, great. I mean, this is so cool. We can put Forbes on our website or Business Insider. But before, it was really attributed to credibility, where you go, okay, we have to have those logos in order to be credible. But what we're saying with DealTale is that we want to be able to track, of the people that saw you in Business Insider, how many of them actually became your customers later? It could be a year later. But what we're able to do is take all of those top of funnel metrics and we track customers while they're still anonymous. So that's how we're different from other attribution tools that are currently out there, is that we track by IP address, so that when they become known by filling out a form, all of their information is backfilled, so we can say, hey, a year ago, yeah, they discovered us because of that PR campaign we did, or because of that really freaking expensive branded content campaign that we did. And then, we can say that it generated, $3 million in ARR, so that you as a marketer can go back and be like, yeah, I'm effective. I don't have to guess what my efforts are doing. I can tell you in revenue, not just in click-through rate.
Yeah, and I watched a fair amount of video on the site, and one of the graphics about the multi-touch journey of a buyer. So I think there's a difference between the imagined buyer's journey that some marketer invents and like what actually happens. So this tool looks like it lets me see what actually is transpiring, and then maybe create more of those like journeys. Am I understanding it correctly?
Yeah, thank you for saying it better than I just did. Yes, that's exactly right. We want to say, oh, they did this, and then they saw my video, and then they went to social media, and then they filled out a form. When really a lot of the metrics right now is that it's taken 8 touch points for a lead to fill out a form, and it might be 3 to 4 months before they ever do. So I think sometimes as marketers, we can feel like failures if something doesn't work immediately,
Well, it depends on how we're being judged, right? So
It depends on how we're being judged. And, this, that great content is really time consuming to create. It takes a lot of strategy. And, what we were talking about before about saying like, kind of have to measure twice and cut once with some things, really dig into who your customers are before you start all of the heavy lifting of actually creating the content. So you want to know that it produces revenue.
I think it's really cool. I mean, every client we have, we get to the attribution conversation, and has not been satisfactory. It's not a good feeling. Like first touch or last touch is just terrible.
Mm-hmm.
We don't feel any resolution with either of those because we know it's more complicated than that. So here's an opportunity to have a more three-dimensional and longitudinal kind of view of what it takes. I think that's really powerful. And I think that feeds into what the buyer behavior is today, which is, as you said just a moment ago, they're going to do all this other stuff before they raise their hands.
Mm-hmm.
And so the buyer wants to self-educate. So I think many of us have gotten on the bandwagon of we need to create self-service buyer experiences, but it's really hard to visualize that. So here's an opportunity to do so. And I think it will help us justify this transition we're seeing from old school dead ahead lead gen to this time over target demand generation work, which is really what almost everybody's trying to get to. So that's why I'm so excited about this, the company that you work for. I think it's very cool.
Thank you.
In one of the videos, there was a conversation with you and a couple of the execs, and you touched on what I think is a really interesting topic, the difference between correlation, things that happen at the same time, and things that are causal, one creating the outcome of another, right? Something creating something else. And I think it might be worth just kind of covering that here for people, because, you know, we all did this kind of work in college if we were business school people.
Right.
You know, we studied correlation in statistics, and we might have only remembered that. Right. So
yeah, and putting it into practice can twist up your mind because, well, I think one side of us as marketers, we want to believe that our efforts are doing what we think that they're doing, or that we have some control over it. And in some cases, our efforts are doing more than we think that they're doing. And the problem is that a lot of us read data the wrong way. So as they were talking about in that episode, Dr. Vishal Sikka and Jake Klein, who's the CEO of DealTale, we're talking about, you know, sometimes there are two happenings or activities in which the data looks like one another. Like during the summer, shark bites and ice cream sales both go up. And you could say, like, maybe because people are eating these ice cream cones, they're getting shark bites because they ate the ice cream. When
they're sweeter,
yeah.
therefore more attractive to the sharks.
Yeah, and you make up a great story. You know, marketers are creative. You can make up anything. But the real thing is that it's a timing thing. They both happen in the summer because people swim more and they eat ice cream more. You know, so sometimes with marketing, we want to say that it's a certain activity. I know a few years ago, I was on a marketing team and we saw this huge spike in website traffic. And we were going, whoa, what happened? What was it? And we had like a webinar campaign or something like that that was happening in the 2 weeks before. And we thought, maybe it was that campaign, but why did they all look on a Saturday? And we couldn't figure it out. And then somehow it got into my LinkedIn, and somebody that happened to have a lot of LinkedIn followers randomly posted something about us. And that was why. And so because of that, we started a talk show like this one, where we used him as the first guest on the talk show. And we did get a lot of traffic because we knew that he had a big following. But that was one of those things where I think at the time we really wanted it to have been our campaign, but it wasn't. So we made a campaign around it.
So causality then is you engage with someone who has a big following, they promote it, and the cause is their promotion, right? As opposed to this correlation.
Right. The correlation that we had was, well, we got a spike in traffic. It must be because we just did a campaign, when those two things didn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. That's like one data point, though, or like a very small data set, right? If you had 100 webinars and 5 days later you saw spikes in traffic, then you might be able to start drawing a relationship between them. So I think we, as humans, forget that the nature of data is sometimes complicated. And we need some tools to help us figure that out. But we also need to go back to what are the fundamentals of our like understanding of statistics in this case, because it's really important. I mean, even I get into conversations with people where they start talking about averages instead of medians. So, you know, the most frequent observation often is more important than the average observation. So it might be that from this episode, we're going to have hundreds of marketers go back to their high school statistics textbooks. I don't know. But I think causality is really cool. And especially, again, if we have these journeys that are 8, 10, 12, 14 touch points. I mean, I look at some of the records in our CRM of people that raise their hands for us. We might have known them for 3 years and they didn't do anything. And all of a sudden they bubble up.
Yeah.
So the causality, I think, is really important. Like, can we program against what is actually observed. And I think that it would be great if we could do more of that. And
Absolutely.
so that's my question. Is DealTale the holy grail of attribution? Are you guys bringing us the holy grail? Have you solved this problem for us, B2B
Yes,
marketers?
I believe so. I know when you say it like that, I think when you make something and you always want to do better and do better with the time. So, like, for example, we created what we thought was a really simple, easy to use tool for marketers to get their revenue attribution. And another thing that we do is the customer journey mapping. And we thought, this is so easy, they're going to be able to do it. Well, we were finding that certain customers were going, hey, this is not actually that easy because I am not in demand gen, I'm in content, and I don't do this. It was easy if you were in demand gen and you were, used to building reports, filtering by data, et cetera. And so that is why we added this ChatGPT-like element to it, because we wanted data to be accessible to all marketers and not just have, if you work in a bigger company or you're lucky enough to have a data analyst that you can say, please find this out for me. Please find this information for me. And they say, okay, it'll be a month because I'm backed up. We wanted everybody to be able to have instant access to data so that they can pivot their campaigns because, even when we're not in a downturn economy, we have to pivot fast. And like with content, if you know that half the people are clicking off in the middle of your video, you have to deal with the data and understand why are they doing that and why aren't they filling out a form and how can I do better next time? So our holy grail, if you want to call it that, is that we want data to be accessible to every marketer and allow them to be more creative with it.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the ChatGPT-like interface. I want to go a little deeper. So just today, Patrick Campbell of Profitwell, now owned by Paddle, published the results of one of his surveys. And it's like overwhelming that having a meaningful AI component creates preference for the solution. And I'm wondering, before we get into how it's working with your data, because you've sort of described it, but I want to go a little deeper. I'm wondering if you've seen any uplift yourselves as a result of rolling out this interface and what that looks like for you. And I think that might be instructive for other listeners to understand the power of this capability.
Yeah, absolutely. We launched, oh gosh, I guess it was at the end of January, we announced that we were going to have this available. And it got written about in the Drum and also in Forbes, and NASDAQ put a, really nice message to us on their building in Times Square. And just from that, we just got bombarded with people wanting demos. And then when they see it in action, there's been a few customer videos that I really wish we could just clip and just put those out there of just our sales team doing the demo. Is they're just going, whoa, people are always asking me for data. And I'm just going to be like, ask the thing.
Ask the thing. Ask the thing. I like it.
Because one of them was saying that, she doesn't have time to just keep answering people's questions. And it's just easier that everybody would have access to it. So it would be a lot easier on me if I could just clip some of those demo videos and use those as videos instead of all the editing that I have to do. But yeah, I think people really, I'd love to know how you think about this too. I think there are two schools of people. I think there are people that really don't want to adopt AI or they think that it's cheating. And then I think that there's the other ones that are going, our jobs have to change and we've got to lean into this. Are you seeing that in your own
Well, I
work?
see both, So I don't think we can replace creativity, contextualization, invention with this kind of tool yet, but we can use it as our co-pilot. We can use it as a way to democratize access to information and data, as you've described. So yeah, I think it's really important. I was kind of surprised by the results of the Paddle research about how important these AI capabilities are to making a solution attractive. So it's interesting to hear your take on it. And so I think that if that kind of demand response interface can be useful for a product, it's probably worth looking at to see if you can make it part of your product. Not everybody's gotten there by a long shot. So yeah, I think it could be very important, but I'd consider it co-pilot. not strategist or pilot.
Oh,
It's it's the
totally.
thing that makes things easier. The thing. That's what we're all going to call it.
Yeah.
Started it here. Yes.
That's the thing. Yeah.
So we started something here. So how is it? So you've had this initial wave of very strong response. Is it changing product marketing thinking at DealTale? I mean, because if you have a really strong response like that, I mean, somebody's got to start asking questions about what does it mean, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, in terms of the way that we've wrapped this story, because, I think a lot of people are, obsessed with the whole wave of ChatGPT type features and things, but really it's a delivery system. It's like, I don't know if it was what you were saying before we started this podcast or what we said in this actual podcast, but ChatGPT itself is wonderful as a research tool. If you're a writer, if you are a trained writer or a publicist or somebody that's obsessed with having a strong perspective and getting that into places all over the web, maybe you got it in TechCrunch, the story, maybe thousands of people read your blog because you had a perspective. ChatGPT cannot do that. We have to have the perspective. But the thing that it is great for is this research tool, because you can ask it questions that, might take you several hours to get the answers to. Use it, like you said, as a co-pilot. So my point with this was that for our purposes at DealTale, the fact that you get these answers really fast, that's just the delivery system of it. But the point is that we're doing really deep attribution, customer journey mapping, causality, that type of thing, which is delivered to you faster now because of DealTale IQ, the conversational AI. But the point is that the data itself is what is important. So not to be rambly, it's too late for that. But for me, it was like
that
wrapping
ship has sailed. We've rambled. We rambled a little bit. But what I wanted to understand is, like, are you seeing an impact on the internal planning in product as a result of the interest in this initial capability set?
No, I think our mission is pretty much the same. People are excited about it. And of course, we're having to build things like FAQs that answer questions like, how can I make DealTale IQ better? How can it learn better from me? So those are questions we're having to ask, whereas we didn't have to do that before.
Fair enough. So here's my new favorite question for all my podcast guests. And it's, what would you do differently, knowing what you know now, looking back? So like, if you look over the last 4 or 5 years of your career, major marketing moves or career moves, marketing initiatives or career moves, what would you do differently and why?
I think that I would have had more fun and taken the joy to the extreme, because marketing is fun. And I think too many times I was worried about getting it right. And I think when you're at a place in your career that we both are, where you can kind of look back over a breadth of, a very long time, you go, wow, that was a really cool opportunity. I wish I had fun in the moments, but I was worried in the moments about getting it right. And so I would just say that that's what I would tell anybody that I manage or anybody that I work with, where just like, whenever we have a lunch, I say, remember to enjoy it.
I think that's great advice. And if you can see it, if you can be present for that and recognize you have that opportunity, it's really rare. And I've done the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
Frequently I've said to the people that I work with or work for me, hey, remember this, because this might be as good as it gets.
Oh my gosh, I love that. That's awesome.
So, you just want to, like, when you realize it, when you're in that moment and something like magical is happening, you have to just step back and say, hey, this is the magic. This is why we're here. So that's great. That's a great place to land our episode. Molly St. Louis, thank you very much.
And thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, if folks want to reach you or learn more about DealTale, how can they do that?
Oh, please go to DealTale.com. We have a blog. We have a lot of books. And if you want to reach me, please hit me up on LinkedIn.
Perfect. On LinkedIn, I'm LinkedIn/in/Ken Lempit. And if you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, please do so wherever podcasts are distributed. And thanks again, Molly. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks, Ken.
Thanks for listening to the SaaS Backwards podcast, brought to you by Austin Lawrence Group. We're a growth marketing agency that helps SaaS firms reduce churn, accelerate sales, and generate demand. Learn more about us at www.austinlawrence.com. You can email Ken Lempet at kl@austinlawrence.com about any SaaS marketing or customer retention subject. We hope you'll subscribe, and thanks again for listening.